You had been for months, both Michael Cohen and Donald Trump Jr., you had been concerned, you had been misled in committee. Let me ask you this. Was this part of a criminal referral?
No, it wasn't part of a criminal referral because we have not been able to get the support from the majority to transmit any of the transcripts to the special counsel. So there's no way that the special counsel can evaluate the truthfulness or lack of truthfulness of the witnesses so far. It is certainly our intention to do that on day one if it hasn't been done prior to the time when we take over the majority in the committee.
What do you believe that Michael Cohen has now been forthcoming on everything else he said to you, or do you believe this is the only thing he lied to your committee about?
You know, there's no way for us to know. I think the special counsel has been very strategic about what he is willing to disclose publicly and when he's willing to disclose it. So the fact that they chose this particular guilty plea, as opposed to other things that Michael Cohen may have admitted to the special counsel that involved the real estate deal, that it involved conversations he is now acknowledging that he did have with Mr. Trump about it, that may be only a part of what Bob Mueller knows, that may shed more light on other aspects of Michael Cohen's testimony that the special counsel is not ready to disclose.
Well, let's move to Donald Trump Jr. You know what he said to your committee. Now, what you've learned in this court filing from Michael Cohen, what questions do you have for Mr. Trump Jr. now?
Well, we are going through the witness transcripts right now, looking at Donald Trump Jr.'s testimony, looking at Jared Kushner's testimony, looking at the testimony of Felix Sater and others to determine, okay, what does this tell us about their truthfulness? What missing pieces does this fill in? What other documents should we pursue when we have the opportunity? Who needs to come back to committee? Who else do we need to raise a concern with the special counsel in terms of truthfulness? So we're undertaking that analysis that's ongoing right now, and I'm not prepared to reach any conclusions.
Look, you've still got a ways to go. I get it. You're not chairman yet. You don't have the staff yet. I get all of that. You have Mueller's investigation in a parallel track, if anything, probably farther ahead of both intel committees in Congress, just because he had a level of subpoena power, as you said, you didn't have, thanks to a lack of cooperation on the other side. But how aggressive can you get in the first 6 months versus what Mueller's doing right now? Do you feel as if you have to stand back for a little while?
No, I don't think we have to stand back. I mean, we'll certainly do our best to deconflict with the special counsel. That's how we started out our investigation. Of course, things broke down when the majority decided that their agenda was quite different, and their agenda was really to try to tear down the special counsel, not work in concert in any way. So we'll try to make sure that we're not stepping on their toes, but there's a lot that we can do and a lot we must do. I will say this, though, Chuck. It's not just a question of staffing, although we will have a much greater staff to be focused on this in the future. It's also the fact that the special counsel really has the entire resources of the Bureau to work on these issues. And that kind of raw investigative power is something that we can't possibly duplicate. So we also look to the day when Bob Mueller provides his report to Congress, because that will help guide us in what further investigative work needs to be done.
Do you think there's enough from what you understand about Donald Trump Jr. for a criminal referral, or no?
You know, I really don't want to comment on that yet. We're still going through the transcripts. But I do think we ought to provide the body of this evidence to the special counsel because, you know, among other things, he's privy to a lot of information that we are not. And there may be aspects that we have concerns about a witness's testimony when it may be clear to the special counsel that that's only the tip of the iceberg.
You know, there was something about today's court filing that, and I'm sure you had the same feeling, which is, well, that's not a surprise. Of course Michael Cohen was lying about this at the time, and now he's not. I guess the question is, has any part of your narrative, what you believe may have happened, been shaken by anything Mueller has surfaced?
It hasn't been shaken, but I'll tell you one thing that I was left with a feeling of a certain deja vu about all of this is Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn, we know from Sally Yates, was making public statements, and others were making public statements on the basis of what Michael Flynn said, that the Russians knew to be false. And that meant that Michael Flynn was in a position to be compromised. Well, Donald Trump was making statements that were false or misleading about this deal in Moscow. And certainly Michael Cohen was making false statements under oath about this. The Russians would know that, because the Russians were on the other end of this transaction, which means the Russians were in a position of exposing this at any time and any place they wanted.
You say were. Why past tense?
Well, because now it's out in the open. Now they could still prove that when the president says, Michael Cohen is making this up, the Russians may be very well in a position to say, actually, there's quite specific evidence that he's not. That is leverage over the president of the United States. And, of course, our most serious concern is there other financial leverage the Russians have? And this is why I've continued to emphasize the money laundering issue, because if there was laundering of Russian money through the Trump Organization, the Russians would be well aware of it. That would be criminal activity. That would be the most compromising.
That's a big leap, Congressman. So where would you begin that conversation? I mean, you need to find evidence to prove sort of the money laundering. I mean, I know the theory of the case on how it could have been done, whether it's golf course investments and things like this. But how do you get at that? I mean, that's a theory. Do you have some evidence that you can begin to sort of, does today's news give you the opening to go down that road?
Today's news shows that the president and his associates were willing to lie or mislead the country about the nature of their financial interest in Russia. And so I think that tells us one thing. It tells us we can't rely on what they're telling us. Now, there have been credible allegations, and there have been statements by the president's sons about how much money they're getting from Russia, or they don't need U.S. banks because they get money from Russia. And there are other indicia of money laundering that raise this serious concern, which I think that someone needs to look into. Now, it would be my hope that Bob Mueller is investigating this, but I don't know that that's the case. And the president has certainly tried to draw a red line and tell the special counsel and the Justice Department, you can't cross this line. And maybe they made the decision that they wouldn't cross that line. But I don't think it's his position as president to be drawing lines. And I certainly don't think when the national security of the United States is at stake that we can afford to just hope that these allegations are untrue.
Well, and just remind people from a Trump tweet in November 2013, I had a great weekend with you and your family. This was to the Algarovs, his buddy Amin. You've done a fantastic job. Trump Tower, Moscow is next. Amin was, wow, 2013. Is that enough now for you to take a look at all of the financial records of the Trump Organization going back to at least 2012?
I don't want to comment on what period we're going to look at or the specifics of what our next investigative steps are. We're going to have to prioritize, as indeed all the committees are, what are the most concerning issues, what are the investigative threads that we were not allowed to pursue. If you look, Chuck, and this is now available publicly, at the majority report on Michael Cohen, it accepted everything Michael Cohen said as perfectly true and proven. And this, if anything, should show the flaw in that reasoning, that you can accept people at face value when they testify if they have a interest to the contrary. I'm
guessing that majority report may belong in a shredder at this point someday. Anyway, Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat from California, the incoming chair of the House Intelligence Committee. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.